and dying in your bed years from now, would you give all the days from that day to this for one chance, just one chance, to farm these characters when you were supposed to? Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Zareth Prevails. Today we're going to talk about 5 characters everyone should be working on. This is the March 2024 edition of this. I do this once per month, at least in general, and you can find the link to the other 2 videos that I've done from this year in the video description if you're interested. And it's just a good heads up, I think, for talking about characters that are maybe a little off the beaten path, that aren't necessarily intuitive for people to be working on right now, to maybe just have an idea at least of like, oh man, maybe I should put this on my list and, you know, get this done. Maybe I should drop everything. I don't know. So let's let's talk about my patrons. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. I truly appreciate you. And folks, if you want to support this channel for free, all you gotta do is hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, comment, mount the algorithm, guys. It's free, and it's kind of like farming a character from like a really twisted point of view. It's very hard to get there. So let's actually let's go to the game. This is madness. How did we get here, folks? Okay, so here are the 5 characters for each of the months. So 10, okay, I guess 10 total characters. Like I said, found in the video description for my explanations for those. These ones are not repeats, though I'm going to eventually have some repeats. The first one is going to be swgoh, and he's required for, at Gear 12, for Jedi Knight Cal Kestis unlock. And a lot of people are just going to leave him there, because Jedi Knight Cal Kestis, you should be working on him. Absolutely. I feel like that's fairly obvious at this point. I have about 1 billion videos talking about how, hey, you should work on this character. And so, yeah, Cal, you want Saw. A lot of times people are seeing him, they see Saw as a character that you should just get to Gear 12 and then just ditch. And I understand the inclination for that. And if you've ever fought a bad swgoh team, then I guess I could, you'll probably understand that exact feeling as well. The thing is, he is far from worthless or useless. He is a little bit of a stretch goal in the sense that he is not needed for anything hugely important. The one thing I would say that you're going to want him for sure to be at, you want him Relic 7, because he is part of one of those nodes in Rise of the Empire that helps you and your guild earn a bunch of GET2, which then translates into Chirotech. And we all know the Chirotech crunch is fairly brutal, and so we want to be able to get as much of that as possible, and your whole guild eventually gets that as much as possible. And a lot of people, see that as a stretch goal, which I guess you should. It takes a whole Rebel Fighters team to get there, and it's a little tricky. So, why else would I say you should be working on swgoh right now? Well, first off, he's part of this kind of ring of characters that are all kind of interrelated that gives you a lot of flexibility in GAC, or potentially even Territory Wars, where a lot of these different characters are going to be used on one team and then another and then another, and it's just kind of this weird revolving door, because Rebel Fighters are kind of the peasants of the Rebel cause, and so for whatever reason, they have more tags and they end up on a lot more teams, and they're a lot more helpful than just the nobility of rebels, if you take my meaning. So he's going to have a lot of different teams and a lot of characters that are going to work with him. For instance, like Cara Dune, she can work on a lot of different teams, but she loves working with Saw. She goes really nicely with him. In fact, Chirrut and Baze work really nicely with him, though they also work with a lot of other teams like Adrad, or maybe even Mon Mothma, Leia, etc. And Drogon sometimes, usually wants to go with Leia, but not always. And so Drogon finds a really nice home with Saw. Captain Rex is another character who goes really nicely with him. There's just a lot of flexibility in his squad, and in GAC, that for me at least, that's a lot of what I'm looking for, is flexibility and kind of interconnectivity. So then when I need something from one of these squads, you don't have one clear-cut squad. It's nice to be able to say, okay, this guy goes here, and kind of connect the dots. You don't run out of characters. So Saw does a lot in GAC. Eventually, maybe he'll do something in Territory Wars. It's kind of log jammed for Galactic Legends at this point, so don't hold your breath too long. But one way or another, he is a much stronger character in GAC than a lot of people give him credit for. Of course, that also comes at the price of putting an Omicron on him and a couple Zetas. So, if you want to work on him, fine. If you don't, I get it. At the same time, he is worth it much more than a lot of people give him credit for. Now, we have OG Poe. I'm guessing a lot of people wouldn't have anticipated having him on this list. Here's the thing, folks. Yeah, he's been around forever. He's a character that everyone has at Relic 5 if they've already farmed Ray, and that's about it. Like, a lot of people are just kind of writing him off. There's a lot of places that are going to want him pretty soon, and already kind of do. First off, probably the least desired he is going to be, the least demand he's going to have is in fleets, though his ship is really good in the context of his own fleet. It's not the best fleet, of course, but with the new Zori ship here, the fleet is considerably better at doing a lot of what they do. And that ship, it used to be such a superstar, man. It used to be the fastest ship out there. It used to be so good, and it's kind of diminished over time. They did the big rework way, years ago at this point, and kind of just shoved him aside. But this fleet, it does fine. It does okay. I mean, it's fine. That's not the main reason you want to work on him, but I will say that his fleet is more relevant than it's been in the past. Now, the other reason you're going to be wanting to work on OG Poe is his functionality on the Zori team, because believe it or not, he's actually part of the best 5-man unit in that Zori team. So, I mean, it's obvious everyone wants to work on Resistance Hero Finn. They want to work on Zori, obviously. OG Finn. Those are good characters, obvious characters. Rose and OG Poe are the two other characters that make the best version of that team. And so putting these pretty wretched mods on him and having fairly bad different potency. I mean, potency's fine, and even his name is Poe. So I mean, but crit damage, he's a tank at this point. Like, you don't want, you want him to be a little bit better than he currently is. And I guess the thing that I'm really gonna push home here, folks, is, so yeah, he's good in the context of that Zori team. You don't need that much more for him. The thing that you want to really pay attention to, though, is the new Datacron set, the set 14 that's about to come out. This is something we're going to be discussing a couple other times in this video. That set is bonkers good for Resistance, and he's going to be an important part of that squad. And so, whereas maybe you just want to put some better mods on him, maybe you just want to spruce him up. I mean, he's a tank. He does pretty good at a lot of different things. You want to put some potency on him. You want to do some cool stuff. I mean, I think that it's warranted, folks. You can add a couple relic levels if you want, or, I mean, if you have a Zori team but you haven't worked on Rey, then maybe you want to actually put some relics on him. I think it's warranted and worth it at this point, and he kind of is largely just ignored. Relic 5 and done. Maybe just Relic 5 and decent mods? I don't know. Seems like it's worth taking a look at least. Oh, man. Kit Fisto. Yeah, you guys didn't see this coming, I'm sure. Well, you did, except because it was on the thumbnail. But I mean, what could he have to offer, guys? He is right now objectively one of the worst characters in the game, and he's also such a letdown after all the cool episodes in Clone Wars, going in and just getting his ass handed to him by Sidious instantly. Just, he's got built-in sunglasses and he's still just not that cool. And so why are we working on him? Well, there's a few different reasons, probably the least of which is there is a special mission. Well, it's not even a special mission, it's just a combat mission that requires him at Relic 5 in Rise of the Empire Phase 1, and typically I tell people you should ignore that node. And honestly, if that's the only reason you're working on Kit Fisto, I would say don't bother. It's not worth the headache. He's not worth even that much gear. That many relics. Bronzium is at a premium, but there's more now. there's two different reasons. First off, as a speculative build for the new raid, it just seems like maybe they're going to require Galactic Republic Jedi, and obviously it's not going to be the entire faction of Galactic Republic Jedi, I'm guessing, but I think that there's a decent shot of him showing up as one of the requirements in the new Gungan raid, the B1 Massacre raid. It's possible. I'm not saying it's absolutely going to happen, but I do think that working on some of these other Galactic Republic Jedi it's probably going to pay off, and so I'm not promising anything on that front. And again, if that's the only reason you're working on Kit Fisto, maybe you just hold off. You hold on to his gear. Now, the final reason I think is by far the most compelling. It's very it's very immediate in terms of you want him at Relic 5 because the new Datacron set has him doing some crazy things for Galactic Republic with Jedi Master Kenobi, and probably Jedi Master Kenobi. It gives guard to the entire team, which means they're not going to be dazed, they're not going to be stunned, and they're not going to take crits at any point. That's not going to solve all their problems, but it's a pretty strong start for a faction and team that's already fairly strong, and he's going to be at the center of it. He's going to be really strong for 4 months while the Datacron set works. And I know that some people hate Datacrons, and they in fact love to hate them, and I get it on some levels at least, but I do think that Kit Fisto is at the very least right now a character that's worth looking at, because he's going to boost your Galactic Republic Jedi team, like one of those teams, to a significant degree, and he's going to potentially also be really helpful in the raid, and he's going to help in Rise of the Empire. Maybe that's something you want to do. That's a secondary or tertiary consideration, but just something to be thinking about, folks. Kit Fisto is going to have one of the best Datacrons out there pretty soon, and I don't want you to miss out on it unless that's something you feel you need to do. Now, Captain Rex, another character that he goes really well with Saw. I already mentioned it once. I couldn't believe he wasn't on one of my first 2 lists, in fact, because he is really strong. And I guess the thing is, I have more than just 3 of these videos or whatever. I'm sure I've talked about him before. He is one of those characters, though, guys, that, he's a requirement for Leia. Like, maybe that's the most obvious thing to work on ever. But if it's not, if you don't want to work on Leia, I would still advise working on him. Even if you're like, okay, well, I'm still, Leia's like 3 GLs ahead of me. He's a character that I think you should work ahead of time on if you can, because he works on a ton of teams. He is very similar to Saw in that sense. So he goes with Phoenix. Obviously, he makes the Phoenix team good. Like, the Phoenix team is just totally awful without Rex on it. But if you don't want to make your Phoenix good, that's fine. That's understandable. They're a bunch of scrubs anyways. Then he wants to go with Leia. Leia loves to have him there because he provides AoE days and tenacity down, and just does all sorts of really cool stuff on her team. If you don't want him to go on Leia, which obviously some of you don't want to work on Leia, then go put him on your General Skywalker team as a 5th character. Shove ARC Trooper out the door and add Rex, and it makes your 501st team significantly stronger. If you don't want to go on that team, you can go with Saw, and Saw makes it a really strong team. And if you don't want to go on that squad, then I'm sure you could probably add him to Bad Batch or any number of teams. And in 3v3 in GAC, if you put his Omicron on, then he goes with clones really nicely as well. He just does a lot of really cool stuff, and he's a rebel fighter, Phoenix, rebel, clone, tons of different teams that he loves to be on and work with. And he's just one of those characters who's going to be in the middle of things. I also will say that he's probably going to be kind of central to the idea of when there's going to be new content from like Bad Batch or other Clone Wars content, or Rebels content for that matter. He's going to be part of that as well. he's a very important character for a lot of different teams, and he's one of those characters, you know how we've always said, if we could have a second Watt to just be able to plug and play on our rosters, then we would do that. I think Rex falls into that category. One of the most versatile and helpful characters out there. Now, finally, we have a third Rebel fighter character, and this is, I was actually floored. I couldn't believe that Baz is not on either of the first two lists of this year. Baz Malbus is probably the most sought after character right now, which is crazy because he was out at the same, he came out like right before I started playing this game, which was, you know, about a year into the game's start. And man, he is, I can't believe, because they haven't changed his kit. It's crazy. His kit's the same, and yet he's not been in demand nearly as much as he is now. He wants to be on all the teams right now, and pretty much all the same teams as the Rex, Captain Rex character is. But man, he's just, I can't believe how good he is right now. It's crazy. Leia wants him as one of her main defenders because she wants those Jedi tanks, but that's cool and all, but they don't pre-taunt. Baz does, and that's a big deal for her. Having someone to take the heat for a little bit is really nice. He also fits really nicely in with Saw's team, which is kind of a theme, I suppose, in what we've been talking about. He also fits really well in with the AdRad squad. He fits in, I mean, he's also just a plug and play that you could add him to just an Imperial squad. He's really strong. You can have Turret hang out with him or not, and he's just one of those cool characters. His two specials are just dispels, and he gains passive turn meter. He gains his taunt passively. He does a lot of really cool stuff. You don't have to put crazy mods on him, and he just sits there and takes it, guys. He regenerates his health and protection pretty well depending on what team he's on. He's one of the best tanks in the game, and somehow he's been hiding in our midst for a long time. I just recently got him to Relics. It's bonkers to me how suddenly he went from nowhere to just the most in-demand character out there, even though he's not required for a single unlock. It's weird, guys. So anyways, those are my 5. That's it for this video. What characters do you think should be in the March 2024 list? I'm curious to hear, guys. There's a lot going on in this game, and we got to keep up on it. So thank you all so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.